Let me now go across, in fact, and introduce our panel this evening. We have Niranjan Hiranandani, Vice Chairman of NDTV. We also have Meenakshi, in fact, Niranjan Hiranandani as well. Okay, and we also have Rajat Sethi. He's the advisor to Manipur Chief Minister, economist, political analyst. He's joining us at this moment. We have Nilesh Shah, member of PMAC. Also joining us at this moment, he's the Group President and Managing Director of Kotak Mahindra AMC. We will also go across to K. Rahman Khan, former Deputy Chairman, Rajya Sabha and Senior Congress Leader. I want to start, Mr. Shashi Panja, Cabinet Minister, West Bengal, is also joining us at this moment. Mr. Panja, I want to start with you. And the first question that I want to ask you, sir, Mamata Banerjee and, of course, Mr. Amit Mitra, the Finance Minister, have come out and, ma'am, they've been very, very vociferous as far as the opposition to the budget is concerned. In fact, Mamata Banerjee went on to say that there is nothing for the poor and the marginalized as far as this budget goes. The government says, and the Prime Minister himself underlined, that this is Sabka budget. It is for middle class and it is an important step, an outlining step as far as the government's forward-looking vision is concerned.
Thank you for having me and thank you for the correction. This is Dr. Panja here.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to say, in fact, Dr. Subhash Sarkar was speaking, and probably he's not there now in the show. This was the same government. I'm just catching on to that once I needed to speak. That this is the same government which spoke about 2 crore jobs a year and which is now melted down to 10 lakh jobs per year. So you were talking about filling up posts, in the various educational institutes. It should be done. But this is the very government which could not keep that promise. And that's why we stand with such a high unemployment index. Similarly, there is vacancies in the government, all the government posts. Even that was not spoken about in the budget today as to how those would be filled up. Rather, there was no tangible, mention of job creation, etc. Now, having said that, vis-a-vis your question, what our leader, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, mentioned right away, that this appeared to be more of an opportunistic budget rather than a futuristic budget.
Okay.
And obviously there is a eye on the elections, the forthcoming elections, and also on the 24 elections. And the point is, we are still worried about unemployment. We are still worried about inflation. And we are still, I have in the panel lots of captains of the industry too. We are actually also worried about the private investment, which has gone down.
Okay.
The private consumption has gone down. The exports have gone down. Obviously, the only thing the government should have and has also done is, of course, allocating that much for the capex, for infrastructure development. That is what it should be doing, and that is what has been done.
Right.
But what about the other pillars which have not worked out?
Okay.
Third, I feel that budget statements in the past, not suddenly. This government is also working since 2014.
Right.
The union government, it's the same government. Why so long? And that is why we say, what took you so long to make these announcements for the middle class? But anyway, all said and done, we'll come back. But I think the rural Manrega scheme, which is an employment guarantee scheme,
yes,
has been deprived of again. It has been deprived.
Okay.
And also
I want
the
to take a
daily wage
response.
earners and
I
others.
want to take a response on that. Mr. R. Gandhi is also joining us. He's the former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. So welcome as well. But Rajat, I want to get your response from you as far as these the opposition, in fact, specific charges that the opposition is making. I just want to add, Sitharaman Yechuri, in fact, said when the unemployment rate is historic high, the budget reduces Manrega allocation by 33%, food security has been cut by 90,000 crore, fertilizer subsidy by 50,000 crore, and petroleum subsidy by 6,900 crores. Now, the opposition is saying that it's just not enough for the government to come and label it as a middle-class, poor-friendly budget. What they have done and the subsidies that they have reduced tell a different story.
Well, Ankit, I respectfully disagree here. Fertilizer subsidy or the petroleum subsidy is dependent on the input cost of the petroleum on the crude oil, and that is how it is governed globally. So I don't go by the amount of subsidy alone as a marker of government cutting the social sector spending. That's point number one. Point number two, around Manrega. Manrega has always been a demand-driven scheme. We've seen when the demand went up last year, primarily because of workers going back to the villages, and government thought that this was the best way to sort of support them during the COVID time. The allocation went up by a staggering 30%. Now it is back to that same old trajectory of Manrega allocation through the budget, and there is no surprises in that. So I think the previous year when it went up surprisingly by 30%, that was a blip, and it should not be seen as a normal course. So I think the politicians should not hoodwink the public into believing a narrative that they want to spin out, and instead come out with their own constructive criticism to the budget. A respected Honorable Cabinet Minister of West Bengal is here with us. I would be very eager to understand what kind of a budgetary sort of innovation has the West Bengal government come up with so far. Has there been any points for the central government to copy from the West Bengal growth model? And happily the government should do that.
But Rajat, you were talking about Manrega as a demand, based as far as the scheme is concerned and the allocation is concerned. You're right. In 2021, it went on to a historic high because, of course, the pandemic had hit home. Then, of course, since then, there has been a decrease every year. But pre-COVID, in 2019-20 as well, right now, the government has reduced it to even less than pre-COVID levels. And that at a time when rural unemployment has also grown.
Well, I think the bulk of the rise has been in the previous financial year, especially during the COVID times. And thereafter, 60,000 crore is still the current allocation. And I personally feel that how the government has thought about it is that they want to ensure that, if the labor force is moving to the urban sector, it needs to be compensated through jobs which are capital oriented. And therefore, the capital expenditure, be it the investment pipeline that the government has or through the railways. There are a bunch of jobs which will be created in various locations, and it would compensate for the loss of rural jobs that can be attributed to the Manrega.
All right. In fact, let me also at this moment go across to Mr. Rahman Khan. Sir, Rahul Gandhi has come out and said that this is not an Amrit Kal budget, this is a Mitra Kal budget that the government is talking about. Is Mr. Gandhi making a political statement? Because the government seems to suggest that not only has this been, like everybody was expecting it to be in an election year, a very populist budget where the government just opens its coffers and goes on a massive spending spree, the government has tried to balance it. It has given something to the middle class, something to the poor, and also, in fact, not spook the market as much.
See, the budget, in my view, is hyped budget because there is nothing much substantial for the middle class and the poorer sections of the society, except some assessment. Just now we are talking about Manrega. Manrega, as you rightly said, it is a demand-driven this thing. There is a demand. The government is not coming out how much demand is there. And also they have not fulfilled, there is only, according to the economic survey, only 45 days employment was provided, even where there is Manrega is given. Manrega is one of the main thing to provide employment in the rural area, which has not been completed.
Okay.
The government is only citing the allocation, but they are not saying how much percentage of the allocation has increased from previous year or previous budget. They very fully say we have 10 lakh crore, 5 lakh crore we have allocated for it. They have to allocate because of the size of the budget. The size of the budget is not the same as what it was 10 years back. And what is important is we should look into the percentage of budget of the total budget is there, because there is nothing on that basis. If you go into look into this budget, the allocations for the various programs is not according to the size of the budget. Okay. And also regarding the unemployment. There's nothing mentioned about unemployment, how they are going to tackle.
Right.
They said they have more allocation, but the economic survey says that they have not spent the allocated budget in the previous year.
Yes.
We are hardly 1 month left in the 22-23 budget. But there they have not spent almost more than 20% of the allocated budget in various cities.
Okay.
So how do we expect that the capital expenditure...
That's a very important point that you're making, sir. And Niranjan Hiranandani, I just want to understand from you, sir. The government says that there has been a massive increase capex outlay as well, which the people, those who are cheering for this budget, seems to suggest that this is going to, in a way, propel the growth. I mean, infrastructure will bring more jobs, and that will have a cascading impact, a positive cascading impact as far as the economy is concerned.
I think I am fully with the fact that the high investment in the infrastructure is going to give and leapfrog this entire economy. So infrastructure, housing, is going to be a leapfrog, which is essential at this point of time, because otherwise the capex that we wanted to attain for the $5 billion target is not going to happen. So all this which we are talking about is an essential part of the overall plan. But having said that, if we want ultimately GDP to grow beyond 7.2%, which is ultimately the objective of the government, infrastructure and housing has to be a part of it. If you look at what China did when it attained 10% GDP growth plus, it was only because of housing and infrastructure. Today, because their infrastructure is more or less complete, because they don't require much housing, and that has been slowed down, their GDP growth is also down. Of course, their overall economy is 5 times India's, and we need a long time before we can catch up. But the infrastructure development, both in terms of roads, railways, airports and others, is absolutely essential. There is a second point to it, which is more important about infrastructure, which was probably missed out by the finance minister to mention. Logistics cost in India is almost 13%. Which means every item which is transported in India, 13% becomes the cost of transport. While in China, it is less than 6% to 7%. Now, if we can improve the infrastructure and reduce the cost, we will be able to increase GDP of India by 2% simply because of an improvement in logistics and a reduction in the transport and logistics cost of India.
Right.
So this is an important factor which does. And the third factor which becomes important in infrastructure is employment. If you look at housing, if you look at infrastructure, whether it's road, ports or airports, the employment factor is very high. Manufacturing today does not employ as many people. Earlier in manufacturing industry, there was very little automation, so employment. So today, whatever we have spent on infrastructure is very, very, very important. And I'm glad that this size of infrastructure development is done. They have doubled it in 3 years. I think it will go even further. And that could be the base for leapfrogging India. Otherwise, you will become like Pakistan and Sri Lanka, where nothing like this has been done.
Right. Mr. Gandhi, I just want to quote the former Finance Minister P. Sitharaman to you, who said that the government is determined to push the new tax regime for which there are a few takers for a variety of reasons. Besides making the new tax regime, the default option is grossly unfair and will rob ordinary taxpayer of meager social security that they have in the old tax scheme. Isn't this a big worry, sir? And how do you, because there is a massive debate right now going on as far as the new tax slabs and the regime is concerned versus the old one?
Yeah, the new tax regime will be more efficient. That's why the government has given extra incentives in this budget for people to shift towards a new tax regime. Still, the option is still available in the hands of the taxpayer to opt for old regime also. So, because new tax regime, there are a lot of rebates and discounts kind of thing will not be permissible. It will be more tax efficient. So that's why they have crafted to encourage the taxpayers to move on to the new tax regime. And that is certainly most welcome, because by efficiency in tax is a very important criterion for the overall tax rate to come down in the years to come. And in the recent years, even in this budget also it is announced how far the new tax regime or their tax efficiency has improved in terms of the time taken for assessment. And when more and more people will opt for or automatically be shifted to the new tax regime, the efficiency improvements the country will enjoy.
Okay. Mr. Shah and Mr. Nilesh Shah, the big picture as far as this budget seems to be suggesting is that, the focus is on growth through higher productive capital spending. Do you believe that this is going to spur not only just, people, this is going to encourage people to spend more, the growth will also bring in a lot of jobs in the market? Because at this moment, let's agree that, jobs and unemployment is a big worrying factor as far as not only the youth are concerned, but economy on the whole, sir.
In 1980, India was equal to China in per capita GDP. In 1947, we were ahead of Japan. In 1960, we were ahead of South Korea. Today, all these countries are way ahead of us. We missed opportunities, and all those countries went and captured. Now, if you want to reduce unemployment, there are few models available in India. The states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Telangana have unemployment ranging between 2.3% to 4%. If rest of India also follows these states, then certainly unemployment problem can be resolved. If we look at investments, this budget has increased allocation to investment. But outside of budget also, we have to improve the ease of doing business. And it is not the responsibility of just central government. The state and the local government also has to come together to support investment. Today we have opportunity of China +1 as well as Europe +1. What we did in mobile handsets, where we were importing 90% of mobile consumed in India in 2014, to where we are producing 90% of mobiles used in India in 2022. We have to replicate across all the sectors. Then growth will happen, employment will be created, and per capita income will hopefully reach one day to South Korea, Japan, and China level.
Okay. Dr. Panja, you said, and I was just going through what Mamata Banerjee had said, that this is an election budget. But the government has largely, not gone overboard in terms of populist measures. I mean, the government has not gone overboard in giving a lot of sops as far, which usually we see before an election year. Why is it that the TMC thinks that this budget is an election budget when the government, rather than in fact, opening up its coffers, has tried to balance this with growth and, of course, other opportunities?
No, they could have done what they did this year. They could have done it earlier. Is that what we are trying to say?
But then it's a catch-22 for the government. If they do it today, then you say they should have done it earlier.
No, they didn't do it earlier. This is one point which you have to accept. I must appreciate the diagram that you are showing that we can see on the screens, and that is very important. So we need not be very ecstatic about things. Just look at India's public debt is high because 34% is from borrowing and other liabilities. Let us appreciate that. We are not in a very good state that way. And thus, 20% of our expenditure is for interest repayments. This is a very important, diagram that you are showing. Secondly, I believe that the government of India should appreciate the concept of cooperative federalism. So, vis-a-vis, just going back to Manrega, what's wrong with the rural employment guarantee scheme? Nothing. But if you don't send funds in time or the funds are inadequate, there is a delay in wages, that's when things get affected, and that's where the cooperative federalism also is disturbed. Thirdly, what I would like to say is, in comparison, the education budget going down by 2.5%. There's a dichotomy here because there are various panels that we have joined in various channels. So the government, in one end, says education and health is something that the state governments have to look into. There is another set. You just spoke with Dr. Sarkar, and there was no mention that education is to be a state subject. He was reveling in the basking in the glory. But there has been it's down by 2.5%. Health down by 2.2%. Manrega, of course, down. Even for that matter, even the PM Kisan is down. Child budget is down by 2.5%. Digital India, digital cuts has also been down. So I'm not saying you were mentioning about the populist thing. Just look at the publicity around Vande Bharat. We are not against anything. The railway budget itself has got subsumed into the union budget. What was wrong in having a separate railway budget? So railway budget, there is only one line which says 2.4 lakh crore is the capital outlay. What is the further breakup? What is it? Is it that you are allotting because you have not allotted in the past? So now you're trying to, it's long overdue. So track and station maintenance, purchase, production of bogies, wagon and locos, etc. What is it?
But overall,
why is there no breakup?
Ma'am.
No, why is there no breakup? We need it explained. I mean, railway recruitment has stopped. So railway jobs, what happens to that? We need a breakup. So it is
Mr.
like...
Lamankan, is that also some, a view as far as the opposition is concerned, that you need to go through the finer details, the finer prints to understand exactly what the final outcome of this budget is? And if that is, of course, the assumption, then shouldn't the opposition also wait for that final outcome before coming out and opposing the budget for the sake of politics?
So, yes, there should be a finer details to understand the budget, no doubt about it. But overall understanding of the budget is they are going to have increased the capital expenditure. But the question which is agitating some of us is that you don't, at the end of the year, that you don't spend the amount, but what is allocated, and by that to balance the budget, you are not. How do you? Because the past, the previous years also, the budget allocated has not been spent. If you don't spend at the end of the day, whatever is allocated from the budget, how do you increase the infrastructure? How do you ultimately it is the expenditure has to be done, which you practically they don't do it.
Right.
They don't allocated budget is not done, and they are resorted to heavy borrowing. And interest is, as rightly said, 20% of the total outgo is for interest purposes. So the total national debt has enormously increased. How are you going to? Because it is all right to allocate some funds, and then, as I said earlier, you have to tell in the percentage basis, because the total volume of the budget will go normally every year. It is not because of the government. The total value of the budget goes. Total size of the economy it goes.
Okay, Ms. Niranjan Hirandani, a lot of people and experts across the globe are talking about three important factors which which are on the horizon as far as the world economy is concerned. Of course, the growth in the world trade has slowed down significantly, and it's expected to slow down further in 2023-24. Then many advanced economies are expected or are on the brink of entering recession. And then, of course, the global security situation, which is also impacting the stability, whether it's Russia-Ukraine war, and of course the impact on the oil prices as well. Does this budget insulate India if all these three, the three sort of scenarios do play out together in the year 23-24?
The answer is yes and no. Yes, because we are integrated with the entire universe now, and we have a great amount of trade with all countries, including China. So we are integrated with the rest of the world, and obviously the recession which takes place in Europe, in the Western countries, does affect our exports and other aspects to it. On the other hand, Russia-Ukraine war also affects our position because of the price rise in the oil, which has taken place. So that's the second factor. But the third factor, which is very important and which I think the budget has really taken care of, is in two parts. Number one, that they are focused on the internal development, which is much more. So whether it is manufacturing, whether it's the PLI scheme, the focus on housing, the focusing on internal infrastructure development, so that we are able to generate actually goods and these products into the country. To the extent to which we export, there is going to be a come down. There is no doubt about it. And we have factored that into the budget, but I don't know whether it's going to become worse or better. One thing which has been positive with the Modi government, which I must compliment them, is the geopolitical management of the West and the East. On one hand, we've been able to shake hands with the West. And at the same time, we have been able to buy oil from Russia at a much lower price. We have saved 35,000 crores in the last 6 months by buying oil from Russia rather than from the open market situation. So the answer is yes, we are affected. We are definitely cannot insulate ourselves. That's why our GDP growth is 7%. If the world economy comes back to normal, I think we could work hard and go to a double-digit growth of economy. But until that doesn't happen, and we don't know what the future is of the Russian-Ukraine war and the recessionary trends of the Western countries and the interest rate hike, which is there in the foreign countries. I think these four factors will be the factors which will run the economy for the next year.
Dr. Banaji, you wanted to make an intervention there.
Now, I just wanted to say that if you study the last financial year, because we want to not speak about COVID. So COVID has made an impact. Russia, Ukraine has made an impact. But if you just study the last quarter, from the first to the last, you will see that the growth rate has actually decreased. The growth rate has decreased. In the last quarter, it will be around about 4%. So the government needs to explain. On the other hand, there's been high GST collections. Leave alone the fact that, the devolution of taxes or the funds which should be actually sent back to the states, and we are one of them, we stand still deprived because we never get them on time. So that also has to be borne in mind, that it's good to compare with other countries, but then comparing with others who have different GDPs, then we would mistake, saying that we are the 5th largest economy, but compare with the other. But the others have different GDPs. For their 2% growth and our 7% growth probably would match. So to compare, it's somehow we need to come out with the facts. That's what I wanted to say.
There are, of course,
and we need to be very clear.
With the GST numbers, there are also, of course, a few experts who are suggesting that this year may not be as, big for the GST collection as the last year has been. So all those factors will have to be taken in account when the government, in fact, proposes or outlays the entire budget.